In the 12 years of running an agency, the hardest thing for me was never like a pitch or having to deal with any particular situation. It was almost always just asking my existing clients to pay us more money. Typically, I'd play this scenario in my head where I ask clients for more money and all of a sudden they just say no and they immediately jump ship. And I would do this for every client, and every client would, in my head, just leave. And I'd be left with a business that no longer existed. What actually happened, of course, is that most clients say yes. They're waiting for increases in prices, whereas one or two might leave. Most of your clients, as long as you're getting results and you have a good relationship with them, they're going to be fine with you asking for a bit more money, as long as you can justify why that is. So in this video, I'm going to cover knowing when you're ready, what to do before you speak to anyone, how to actually increase your prices, and what to do when someone says no. So the first question is, how do you know when you're ready? And for me, it was never a feeling. And I think a lot of people have this idea that you'll just feel ready one day to ask your clients for more money and to increase your prices. But for me, it's much more to do with the numbers in your business. The issue with a feeling is that it never comes because it can't be really measured. You don't know when that feeling's going to actually arise and you can't quantify it. So it becomes really difficult to reach a point where you know you're ready to ask. And then what happens is you leave it for so long that eventually you just don't have the confidence to ask, because sometimes you need to up your price gradually. And to do it gradually and consistently is a lot easier than just waiting and waiting and waiting until you're in a position where your margins are already squeezed and things are tough. Then you ask for a big hike and the client never saw it coming. So they have this feeling that they've been kind of taken by surprise to some extent, which you can understand because you could have just asked, but you decided to put it off, and now they've got to budget for something much larger than they had anticipated. The indicators that I eventually got to become used to was my pipeline. If my pipeline was healthy in terms of the amount of value in the pipeline, particularly in the weighted column, so you have pipeline value of all leads, and then based on confidence scores, you have a weighted pipeline of what you think is really likely to land. And if that was healthy and I was maintaining a good close rate, and a good close rate would be anything from say 30 to 50%, but anything above 50% for new business would really indicate the need to increase my prices, because if we're closing above half of every deal, we don't need that many customers in our business. And actually that creates even more problems in terms of capacity and volume and managing that. So when those two things were aligned, we had a bit more confidence to increase prices, because if we lost a few deals or a few people said no, it didn't really make that much of a difference. We could always have the next lead in the pipeline ready to go. Compare that to when you need business to come in, like if you have a slow pipeline or if you're just not really closing that much. Now you're in a position where you don't have that confidence. So now it feels scary to ask your clients, your existing clients, for more money, because you're in a position where you're on the back foot, and everything about that is going to resonate and radiate from you. The way that you deliver, the way that you ask, and the confidence in which you approach the situation. The best time to put your prices up is when you least need the money. Okay, point 2, what to do before you speak to anyone. And this really comes down to your own permission that you give yourself to increase prices. A lot of people treat this like you get to a certain point and you think, hold on a second, we're undercharging, or we need to ask that person for more money, that client for more money. And you don't know why, you just have this feeling because maybe your margins are squeezed, maybe you're looking at the market and all of these things. But really, if you start to list the actual reasons, you build yourself a list of reasons to justify your actions. And you normally can do these things, right? You're paying probably more in terms of wages to hire a better caliber of person or a more senior person. Potentially you've taken on a project manager. This is something that we did. We took on a project manager and it was an operational cost for us to be able to deliver a better service. There were things like tooling, upgrades of software, because now we could maybe afford a better, more premium software than we used to. There's the fact that we're getting better at our craft, and as you will be getting better at what you do. You'll be becoming more slick in terms of how you deliver work. Your workflows will become more optimized. You're becoming more efficient. All of these things are done by you to help your clients to become more competitive and to stay competitive in their marketplace. And therefore you deserve to put your prices up, so long as you're doing those things. So the trick isn't to just come at this from oh shit, we need to increase prices. It's keeping a track of all of these investments that you're making and how your business is changing and adding more value over time. So that when the time comes that you want to increase your price, you can have a conversation that doesn't look like you're just increasing the price and therefore your clients' costs are going up. You frame it in the way that it's an investment. So they feel like they're investing in your business to help their business. Okay, point 3 is how to actually increase the prices. How do you actually do this? For me, there was a few key things. So one was you'd never ever do this in bulk. You never email your clients all at once saying you're putting up your prices by 10% or whatever you might be thinking in your head. This for me increases the risk of something going wrong, and it means that you no longer have control of the situation. As soon as the email's out, how that person receives the email is going to be down to the day they've had, the frame of mind they're in, your most recent results, your most recent report. So for me, it really came down to controlling the situation as much as possible. And to do that, you can start with small batches, just go one-to-one with clients always, because at the end of the day, an agency is a relationships business. You have a relationship with your client who is putting their hard-earned money into you in terms of investing, but they're also trusting you and asking you to understand their business and their situation. And so when it comes to something sensitive like a pricing increase, you really want to lean on that relationship. You will know some of the clients that you have a better relationship with, the ones that you're getting great results with, that you really get on with. That conversation should be the starting point to build up confidence. Where you have a client that is maybe not getting the results that you may have wanted, or potentially you've had a strained relationship, you approach that situation in a completely different way, with more sensitivity and understanding their situation. Potentially you don't even ask for an increase that matches some of the other clients. Or perhaps you park that client to one side because you're going to wait until you get the results. It's about choosing the right moment to approach the pricing increase conversation. But for me, always start with a high probability good client, because that will just build your confidence up. And the reason why you want to start with small batches is because, again, you control the situation. If you ask 4 clients and they all push back and say they're not really happy with the situation, then you can go back to the drawing board, you can reassess the situation, and you can decide on how you move forwards. If you send a bulk email out to 22, 25 clients and they all feel aggrieved, it's going to be a lot harder to diffuse that situation. Another thing that I learned was to always remind the client of the cost of change. One of the advantages of working with a client for a long time is that you build up this knowledge and understanding of their business. So for them to go through the pain and the cost and the expense, literally the expense of re-pitching the work, doing all of the interviews, potentially reading all the proposals, getting back to everyone, doing the onboarding, going through all the tests that you go through with any agency that comes on board is always saying, like, let's try this and that to see what comes from it. Let's do a diagnostic. All of the stuff that we do as agencies that's important. But at the same time, the client doesn't want to do that over and over and over again. It's costly for their business to go through that cycle again. And so it's really worth just mentioning that to the client, not in an aggressive way where you're saying it's going to be expensive for you to say no, but just reminding them of the value that you've created together over the time that you've been working together. And a third point is to give them enough notice. Again, going back to the idea that you don't ask when you need money. In the same way, if you give yourself a comfortable runway and you're in a healthy stage of your business, you ask the client to increase their price, but you give them enough notice and flexibility to be able to manage their own cash flow. Right? You make it as easy as possible for them to continue with you. If you drop it on them and say, right, we're coming up to the end of this month, and as of next month, you're going to be paying more money, from their side, they're thinking, oh, I haven't budgeted for that particular thing, right? You're going to push them into a position of having to make a choice. So giving them enough notice is just being a decent human being, which is kind of the real underpinning advice I can give, is just be human, just have the conversation with your clients and just explain the idea and the fact that you need to increase your prices to continue working together. And as a business owner or someone that respects another business, they will understand that those things are part and parcel of it. Whether that's to ensure that you're the agency that keeps up to date and keeps skilling up and adding new services and new ways of helping that client, to just understanding that eventually margins get squeezed as costs rise. Even though I did this at the start, I still did the same when we had account managers who would manage the price increases for their portfolio of clients. They did the same approach, taking it in small batches, having one-to-one conversations, and just taking things slow and being a decent human being. Okay, so what to do when someone says no? This is the thing that scares everyone the most, and I know the agencies that I speak to, it's the thing they fear. It's the thing that I feared as well. And the truth is, you probably will lose one or two clients. That's what we went through every time we did a price increase. We typically lost a couple of clients. It really wasn't what you think it is, and it was never as scary as it first appears. So even though it was a frightening thing, because you always have these tricks that your mind plays on you, the reality is that most of your clients will move with you because they value the relationship and the work that you're doing. The one or two clients that drop off tend to be the right clients. They're normally the ones where there's a strained relationship, where they are completely underinvested. Maybe their business isn't actually that good. Or on the other side of the coin is maybe you're not doing your job and maybe you're just not getting results. So typically the one or two clients that we lost, we knew that those would be the clients that would be the most at risk. But the benefit of this is when you have a healthy pipeline is you're making room for new clients at a new pricing who don't ever feel like you've just increased their price. They're coming in fresh. They're valuing what you do and they're seeing the new agency that you are, right? So every time you win a new client, you are updating your agency and that client is working with the current version. Whereas your legacy clients are working with the old version from like 2-3 years ago, which is why we have to reframe the value of it. So losing one or two clients isn't always a bad thing. Not only do you increase capacity, but typically, as I said, for us, it was always the clients who were a bit of a nightmare to manage, to be honest. Got to that point where there was a bit of a strained relationship there. And so leaving those clients to do their own thing, and they're completely entitled to go and work with another agency, as are we also entitled for being able to put our stake in the ground to say like, no, we have to increase our prices, because the relationship being strained is often quite heavy on your team. It can be quite a bit of a nightmare to come into work and manage that, and the emails and the language and jumping on the phone calls and things becomes a bit harder when you have that strained relationship. So by losing those clients, you free that up and your team becomes a bit more loose and shoulders will just drop a little bit, and maybe you'll have a better kind of morale running through the team. So to really cap things off, start with your pipeline. Make sure you're running a healthy pipeline and a good close rate. Make sure you're in a good position where you don't need a pricing increase, and start from there. Start from a list of clients and start to look at how those clients currently sit with you. Are you doing well for them? Are you getting results? Do you have strained relationships? Potentially you could mark things like performance, relationship, likelihood of upgrading, something like that, and then just approach them on a one-to-one basis. Have the conversation and plan out the conversation. Speaking to one founder who is very direct and time poor will be very different to someone who's more empathetic and needs to have that conversation and to feel like you're really kind of holding their hand through the process. And that's why we don't really ever do like a one size fits all. And just remember that increasing your prices is one of the fastest ways to increasing your profit. There's no extra delivery, there's no extra anything. You are just adding the value that you already are, but you are increasing your prices, which means that every project you now run is delivering more to your bottom line, right? Whereas before, maybe it's being choked because your costs are increasing all the time. So that's why it's important to not only do it for survival and not having to rely on volume of clients, but to do it so that you can maintain healthy margins. If you found this useful today, don't forget to smash the like button, drop a comment if you've got any questions or thoughts on this. I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.